Hello, welcome to Coaches Connection. We've got a new series this episode. We're going to start a new thing off called Chalk Talk, which is where we just go one on one with various coaches from around the UK, and we discuss all types of things that you might miss if we do a round table and stuff. A little bit more intimate, a little bit more one to one. Hopefully, we get a little bit of playbook stuff in there. Hopefully, we get a little bit of insight that we probably couldn't cover if we had a bunch of us talking about stuff. But as you can see to my left of me, I think, hopefully on the screen, we'd like to welcome back Ryan Baker, who was top-notch LC in the Midlands area. And always glad to have him on. His knowledge is stupendous, so it's always good to get him on. We had a great chat last night about different stuff, and this is where this whole thing has came from. So he's the guinea pig. He's also the first guest up. So without further ado, welcome back, Coach Ryan.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here.
And basically, what we're going to do, we've got a few PowerPoint points. We're just going to talk stuff, shoot the breeze as two offensive coordinators, and obviously we're both pretty much veterans in the game at this point right now. So we'll have a difference of opinion on stuff, and obviously if I think that what he's talking is different to what I do, we'll talk it out, and hopefully the answers that you get will be helpful down the road. So welcome aboard, Coach. We're going to start off, and we're going to lead off to what we discussed previously. And the topic of conversation that brought this whole thing about after our conversation last night was you were talking about the ideals of an OC conforming to expectations, which I thought was a great point. And if you want to expand on that and embellish on that, feel free to do so, and we can go in depth from there. But I thought it was a great subject to start off with. And I agree with a lot of the points you said. So if you want to talk after again, and we'll discuss it more in depth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that conversation just came about from, I guess, a number of years having been around British football, and I've been lucky enough to be at the lowest level in a team that got hammered week in, week out at junior football, up to GB adult, and so I think I've seen the highs and lows of British football. But what that has done is introduced me to a lot of different coaches, a lot of different coaching styles. And the conversation we were having last night was more around some of those expectations. So like I said to you last night, I've had a number of arguments with different coaching staffs about me not carrying things like play sheets, like scripts and things like that. And I think that's purely from an expectation that they see it in the college game or they see it in the NFL game and expect that a British coach should be doing the same. And I think a lot of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. There's like a certain image that's portrayed as an offensive coordinator. I think, and that if you don't tick off those boxes, you're not perceived to be doing the best that you could possibly be as an offensive coordinator, regardless of what your own skill set is. I think that, like you say, if you haven't got a call sheet, if you haven't got a risk John, if you're not wearing a headset now in this modern era, it's like you're basically not doing all you can. And I think that your point yesterday was so spot on in terms of like whose expectations are we adhering to? Because at the end of the day, I'm not sure you ever been a coach, but at the end of the day, when things go south and they go shit sideways, who gets the blame? Because it's never the DC, and I can stand 10 toes down and say that it's always going to be the LC. So what I got from that was like, you know what, it's best to do it your way, and if it fails, at least you've done it your way. And the other way to do that, and this is what I maintained as well, is you have to have an understanding head coach who will be an enabler, as I said before, and let you do your thing. And that's not always the case. And sometimes you want a head coach to push you, and sometimes you want a head coach to, I don't know how you feel about it, but you want a head coach to push you, and sometimes you want to be a head coach to leave you alone and let you do your thing. And there's a time and place for both.
I mean, as a coach, I've been very lucky around Midlands football. I've had influences like Wayne Hill, Tony Attersmith, Paul Cooper. I've had what I would class as a great education. I've been around people like Jason Scott and Maxwell Petterjohn on the defensive side who I can bounce things off. But I think kind of going back to that expectation point is that we live in an amazing world now where information's at your fingertips. If you want to know something within 5 minutes, you can know it.
true.
I think one of the pitfalls is that you then kind of try to use a cookie cutter to put that into your own stuff. And I've had conversations where like, oh, did you see Oregon last night? This player was amazing. Like, we should use this. I'm like, I get it, and it's an amazing play for them. But you know, this doesn't necessarily fit my vision of what I want to do for offense. And I think there is a massive expectation now in terms of putting things in your playbook in terms of what people are seeing on Saturdays and Sundays that now needs to be run. There's an expectation of what you should be doing in terms of on-field stuff. And I mean, you know me, I've been around football for a long time. I'm not someone that really conforms to what people expect from me. And that's one of the pieces of advice I would give to offensive coordinators, really. Is
I mean, I totally agree, and I think that's something that we'll share. Like, if you look at any of the videos that I've done, I always say be yourself. The first thing you do is be yourself. However, I mean, I want if I branch off from that a little bit, is when you're coming through the ranks though as a young coach, if you've not got that, we talk about mentor. I know I speak about my mentor all the time, but if you haven't got a mentor, or you're not taught in the right way, like you were taught, or around the guys who were up there in terms of football knowledge and the level they were playing at and coaching at, if you've not got that, what is your level of expectation, and how are you really getting the best out of what you could possibly be? So when you do become an offensive coordinator, you're like, you think you're good, but actually you're a long ways off it. But you've not really been prepared for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the pieces of advice I would give is coach the positions first.
Yeah.
Like, as I've come through the ranks, you know, I started off as a graduate assistant O-line coach, then moved into the O-line coaching role. Was doing that for a number of years. Coached tight ends for Steve Rains at GB Junior. I've coached running backs. Was then the run game coordinator at Birmingham Lions. I've done receivers. QBs has obviously been the last kind of massive chunk of my career in the last kind of 10 years. So I've been lucky that I've been able to coach every position across the offense.
Yeah.
And I think I've been lucky to do that in programs with good coaches. What I would say is, I think coming back to that technology point, is that 10 years ago, the technology probably wasn't at a point where you could find mentors and ask questions, things like that. So while I was extremely lucky to have that upbringing, and it's something I'm thankful for every day, I do think if you haven't got that around you now, you can find that support.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
And like I've always said to people that if I can help anyone in any way, all they've got to do is reach out, and I'll happily do whatever I can.
I've also found that 9 times out of 10, any coach that is pretty much up there will always share the stuff. It's guys that you don't really know, or you don't know anything about, that they keep things close to the chest. But if you talk to a guy who's been either successful or in a successful program, they actually will open up and talk to you. It's just that there's not enough of them.
Yeah. You know? And there isn't an original idea out there anymore. Let's be honest. You know, you can package things different ways in terms of playbook, or you can do certain drills, but we've all learnt it from somebody else. And I think we need to remove some of that ego state in the British game, and like, this is my little thing, because it's nonsense, really.
Yeah. I mean, I've known Wayne a long time. I've never coached around Wayne, but obviously I've been around him a fair few times. And I remember one of the things that I remember doing, that when we were part of the Wildcat staff, when Adam Burton took over with no coaching experience, I reached out to Wayne and I was like, "Can we visit?" And I know you were there then at that time. I didn't know you, but you were coaching at the time. But I remember that they took so much away. The coaches who came at, they took so much away from that one visit to a program who's got like 100 athletes, 15 coaches, that they probably would never get. And I think it's things like that, like visiting people, and you know, as you say, now with technology, you can talk to somebody, you can be in an online clinic in a matter of moments. Back 10, 15 years ago, we hadn't got that. And I still saying, if you can go and visit somebody, and if they're open to letting you come across, and I think we've spoken about, you know, if anybody worth a salt will open the doors for you, unless they've got something to hide, or they're not very good at what they're doing.
Let's be honest, that's what the Americans do.
Yeah.
So a lot of, you know, colleges go and visit with NFL teams and bring stuff back. High schools go and visit colleges and bring stuff back. Like, there's so much of that goes sharing and kind of traveling and observing practice. I've been there. I've been lucky enough to go over to Texas Tech. I've been lucky enough to see people like IMG who were doing their draft prep.
Yep.
You know, there's nothing better in the world than just sharing knowledge with people, and I think
That's what the
that's
show's
why.
supposed to be about. You know, I mean, it was built for us to share with us. You know, that's kind of the whole reasoning behind it. And you know, if anybody follows my social media, probably not. But if they do, they'll know that I had a bit of a rant yesterday about people not coming forward, because it's the truth. And you know, I won't air people out, but I've reached out to so many programs, so many coaches that they just don't answer me. And no is better than just blanking somebody. And if you don't want to do, I mean, the case in point is yourself. You like I said, you don't really want to go up here and talk about a PowerPoint or stuff. You happily come on and just chat and be which, you know, to me it's invaluable for a young kid who wants to learn stuff. So it's coming on and getting involved and paying back your little bit, because as you said, as I've said, and as you said, is that somebody taught you, somebody taught me. You know what I mean? And whether they were a plan mentor or somebody who used to around all the time, you learn it and you pass it on to somebody else. This is why it's. I don't get it. I just don't get why I want to do it anymore, or why people are
This is
so.
why I'd rather have just like conversations. I think things like PowerPoints and creating beautiful looking decks and stuff like that is great, but often the presentation's so packed that you don't get to ask questions, so you only get that kind of snippet of what people want to see. So I'm not a massive fan of like that presentation style. I know some people are, some people aren't, but for me, kind of 15 plus years into coaching now, I don't really come away from those kind of presentations with that hallelujah moment.
Yeah.
In the first
Oh,
few years, absolutely.
yes. Yeah, that
But
is true. That is true.
I think now it's just a case of, can I pick up that little verbiage, or does that word, you know, it's really helpful for that. But for me and my learning experience, I'd rather be challenged on stuff.
Yep.
So.
A great segue into my next point, which is going to be, you talk about being unconventional because you've been it for so long, and you've got your own way of thinking. Talk a little bit about your game planning process. For anybody that wants to listen, I know that we've touched on it a little bit in the past on the roundtables, but talk a little bit about your game planning process, because I know you fit your game planning process into practice and stuff, and we'll extend it to your not only game planning but game calling. You know, what's your process in those situations?
So, I mean, a lot of my early week stuff is done with game film. So just watching game film over and over again. Who's a problem? Who can't I block? Who's blitzing? When are they blitzing? Just trying to get a feel for what the defense want to do. What coverages are they playing? What are they doing on the hashes? It's not always the easiest with British film, to be fair, but get as much of a picture as that. And then I try to give myself an outline of what I like in my system versus that. So then I have more of a mental script. Like I say, I don't write scripts. I don't write play sheets, call sheets, purely because I think that takes a huge amount of time to get right, and that's time that I just don't have to spend. So I'll go into practice after game planning with an outline of what I want to run. So perfect example would be East Kilbride in the semi-final as an example. It was quite evident that their strength was up front on the D line, the interior too specifically. So my game plan going into that game was, right, let's get onto the edges, let's run a ton of bubble screen, let's run a ton of outside zone, get them moving sideways, and let's see A, if we can find a crease, or B, wear them down. So that was kind of the prep going into it. That's what we did all week long. And this is really why I don't like to do game sheets, is because come half time of that game, bubble screens were getting killed, outside run games getting stuffed, but actually we were getting success where we didn't think we would, and we were running kind of inside power pretty well. and we kind of evolved the script at half time. So then this is actually what we're going to start running now.
So
yes, it's not what we did all week, but
you felt that at that point because you game planned, and the game plan that you'd done for that week, and basically, in all terms of purposes, failed.
Yep.
You basically went to what you knew, which was your gut.
Yep.
And then when you went to your gut, I know you hear a lot of coordinators talk about the gut, because I think the more you do it, the more and more you'll feel that I feel it's this, I feel it's the right time to call this, the right time to call that. I think that just comes with experience. And a guy like yourself is like, you don't do sheets, you don't do stuff, and it's like when you're game planning, I've always had this thing about incorporating the staff into game planning. So to do that, like we will all watch the film, we'll all do certain stuff. But if you're game planning and you're not doing any kind of shit, like as we said before, Jay got me into doing openers. So I still do the 12 openers, even though I only probably get to 3 on a game day itself. But I will still do this for my own coaching development and getting the play right. But also, when I'm game planning, I'll incorporate every single coach that we've got on staff, and I want them to watch the film, come back to me with their input, and then we put that plan together as a staff. So that on a Sunday, win, lose or draw. Well, we don't draw, do we? Win, lose or draw. We're together in what we do. Even though I'll take ownership of it, I just feel that having that is just a way to develop my coaching staff, really. Whereas I know, like, there were times in 2019 where I'll put that stuff out there, and then come the Sunday, it was just my input and nobody else's. But it's out there. So, are you developing your staff other ways, or was it a case of actually, you know what, we didn't actually have any staff? Because in some cases, there's not that much staff around, is there? Whereas, like at the Rev, they had a lot of younger guys who were coming through. So I felt like it was my duty to try and bring them on as best I could. Whereas if you've got a seasoned staff, or you're basically on your own, then the priorities change, right? So what was your viewpoint of not doing the scripts, not doing the game planning with the sheet, and why did you move away from that completely?
So I guess it's kind of over the last few years. So I came from an organisation in the Birmingham Lions who were very buttoned up, very organised. And I'm not going to say that didn't rub off on me, it absolutely did. But I also saw the toll it took on, like, specifically Paul Cooper, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, Coops. The amount of hours he had to put in writing scripts and doing his sheets and stuff like that. Now, I was quite lucky that me and him had a very kind of symbiotic relationship. We both kind of thought the same way. We both did things the way, so we could bounce off each other. Kind of fast forward a few years, and I'm now in the offensive coordinator position. I would send an outline of what I wanted to do in practice. So this is the theme for this week. So, coming back to East Kilbride, so, we're going to run a lot of outside stuff. So coaches, please go away and prep your practice plan for running outside zone. I didn't get so much feedback in terms of game planning, but I had Carl Lewis as the online coach, who's a great coach, great game planner in the run game.
Good guy, great guy.
But other than Carl, it was a fairly inexperienced staff. I think, as I said before, I was taking QBs and receivers on my own as well.
Yeah.
So I think my work ethic just naturally kicked into overdrive, and I ended up doing everything myself, which, yes, is probably to the detriment of some of those younger staff. But what I tried to do is lead by example. I was still getting input from them, letting them kind of develop their own practice scripts, stuff like that. And I was certainly asking for them feedback on game day. But I kind of leaned more heavily on my own experience in terms of scouting and game planning.
So if you took another job now at another club which maybe had more staff, would your process be the same, or would you change it? You would change it up if it was a different situation, if you had the people, or would you still stick with what you, at the end of the day, stick with what you know and stick with what you do?
I would love to be able to be in a position where I could say, go away and scout the film and tell me what you think, and then kind of all come together and say, well, actually, I saw this, I saw that, which is one of the best things about scenarios like the GB program, when you've got 6, 7, 8 elite coaches all looking at film in their own time, and then you come together and meet about it, and it's actually like, yeah, we can do this, we can do that. I think that's the perfect scenario where you can all look at film and you get different perspectives from everybody and kind of merge that into one game plan. That would be my ideal.
That's what I mean. I may have forced it at times, but that's how I've always approached it. And I just think it's my job to make the people around me. But I'm not saying I'm the smartest cookie. I'm not at all. I don't know nothing. But what I do know, I'll pass on. And it's like it would be detrimental to my own honesty if I didn't try and pass on or show people a way of doing things, even if it's wrong. I'd rather come on and say, "Oh, you know what, coach? That's the biggest side of bollocks I've ever heard." But that's how I do it. Whether it's right or wrong, that's how it's always been done. And if you're afraid to pass that forward, then I don't know where to go from there. But as you say, in an ideal world, I think we're all in that same vein where we want to go with it. Sometimes you can't go. I mean, there's been times where other places where it's just you, and that's it. And those are the times when I think where you've got to be mentally strong as a coach, because it is just you. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's one of the things I think, certainly from my learning perspective, I think learning from the things that you like is brilliant. Yep. I think I actually learned more from the things I didn't like around the other programs I was involved with. I didn't like certain plays, didn't see the point in running them. So that kind of helped me evolve into my stuff. And similarly, while I don't run a traditional kind of opening 10 plays or anything like that, I always start off with the same play, which is probably one thing I got from Coops, in that you knew when you were coming out the gate, you knew what the first play was. And I tried to instill that into my guys. But what I tried to do is I ran an RPO for my first play. So even though we knew what the play was going to be, it still gave the QB options that if that team came out, if it came out selling out for the run, we still had options.
Yeah. I know you got a clip. You got a clip. Do you want to put it up, coach, and we'll talk about it?
Yeah.
I think that as far as if you're gonna be that regimented in what you do, you have to have an answer built into pretty much everything. So never been a big user of RPOs per se. I know we attach the bubbles to run plays, but this looks kind of nice. So if you want to talk us through this and why this is your opener and what it provides for you, this could be a nice little wrinkle that somebody could take away from this.
Yeah. So this is my opening play pretty much every game. So it's what we called grind. It was our kind of hang your hat on play. So we would run this play a million times in practice. It's all pre-snap leverage based reads. So we give the QB a couple of options. So we've got a vertical leverage read on the left side here. So we've got X running a 3-step slant and H running the seam. So if we get someone come down hard on H and they're going to press H, or they're going to play the apex and come off the edge in run support, we can just go straight over the top of that. So we've got an option. If they're playing high on H, we can clear them out and run the X on the slant. So that's our kind of left side combination. So if the defenders are sitting off, we've got that kind of coverage beta there. In the box, we've got our inside zone play. So running back's just going to mesh with the QB, head to the B gap and find a cutback lane. On the opposite side, we've got our inside bubble screen, what we called hot, because it was always hot inside. So our inside bubble screen. And again, if we got a leverage, so if we had the apex guy kind of more in towards the box, we could just keep him honest by throwing that bubble screen. So however they stacked the box, whether they wanted to defend the pass first play, we could run it. If they were going to defend the pass first play, the run first play, we could pass it in one or two different ways. So we tried to give the QB as many options as we could.
So basically, this play is just agreed off the QB, right? The QB is going to decide where this play goes, correct?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I've always been always been an advocate of never questioning the QB's decision making. So I was extremely lucky for a bulk of my career that I got to be around one of the best QBs in the UK, in my opinion, Tris Varney.
Perk.
Yeah. But I guess the one thing people don't see is how hard he worked off the field. Like he would, to the point where he would make himself an Excel, a scripted Excel document that would spit random plays out at him, and he would have to draw them and work out his coverages. And he was a very talented kid, but one of the hardest workers you've ever seen. And something like this was perfect for him. But even down, I had a QB room at the Steelers of 3 people. So I had Tris, Oscar, and Steve, and all 3, from tenured veteran Tris Varney to, 2-3 years in football, Steve Yates. They could all run this play really well. And the one thing I always gave them kind of carte blanche to do was to experiment in practice. And I think that's sometimes we're a little bit guilty in practice. We want perfection in practice. But actually what I wanted them to do in practice is to try and work out, right, if this guy's at 4 yards, can I beat this guy with that throw? The answer's often no. So now it's 5 yards. Like, let's experiment with it. Let's kind of chuck it about. Practice is there for a reason. I'm not expecting the QBs to be perfect in practice, on the caveat that they explained to me what they were doing and why.
Yeah.
If they just like threw a pick for the sake of throwing a pick, then that's a different conversation, right?
Absolutely. I think we've all been there, and you're like, if you tell a QB something like you got the green light to do this, and as long as they come off the field and they go, well, I saw this, so I did this. They're kind of like, well, okay, we'll watch it off film. It's not a problem.
Yeah. And that's the lucky thing that I had. Obviously, I had a QB that I knew very well for 10 plus years. So we saw the field the same way. But I think it's really important as an OC to kind of have that, even if it's on a 1 year thing, is just knowing what your QB likes, knowing what he doesn't like. Tris, for as good as he was, he would always throw to the wide side because he trusted his arm talent.
Makes sense.
So I had to, if there were things that I wanted to put into the short side of the field, then I had to kind of work around that game planning wise. Not that was good or bad, but he did have that tendency, and I think understanding your quarterback as an OC is such a huge thing, and that's why I would kind of start out the game, excuse me, and let him see things, get his mind sharp on that first play, make sure that they're reading the defense on the first play. The last thing I want to do is just send a run in, it's a handoff, and the QB's kind of disengaged from play one.
Is there a time or a reason why you would not run this as an opener? Because this seems to be like a good as opener as any, really.
It was the opener for a lot of my games. There were some teams who, if they were more aggressive, I would maybe take a shot first play. Just to back the coverage up a little bit, excuse me, and just to kind of give them an early heads up that actually we're going to come after you with the pass game. But yeah, 9 times out of 10 we started with this.
Are you like a big formation guy, coach, or are you like literally like a 2x2, 3x1 traditionally?
I'd be lying if I said 2x2 wasn't my favourite set.
Yeah.
I'm a 2x2 guy. I've been around 2x2 for a long time.
And you use 2x2 because it gives you the best what?
I've been lucky that I've always had receivers that could stretch the field, and my system is largely predicated on putting the outside linebackers in a bind.
Yeah.
So a lot of my quick game is based around how we can apex those outside backers and make them wrong. So that's particularly why I like 2x2. But saying that, like, I ran a lot of shifter motion in the last couple of years.
Yep. So
the one thing I was very aware of is that 2x2 can be quite bland in some scenarios. So I would shift to like 3 tight end sets, 2 back, 2 tight ends. I was lucky that I built my verbiage that I could tag a bunch of different systems. So I think we had something like 5 base formations, but with the tags, we could come out in something like 30 different formation looks.
Want to embellish on that, coach, or is that close to heart?
So again?
Do you want to embellish on that, or is that something that you want to keep close?
No. So I would bring things like the tight end in to run single tight end. Could run a pro back, like split back look with a tight end. That tight end stuff allowed me to do things like what we called dagger, which was the book sweep. Obviously, 2 and 3 tight end sets just created extra gaps for the defense to cover.
Yep.
So we could do that specifically in short yardage or goal line situations. The reason I used motion was because it kind of had people confused a lot. And what confusion tends to do to a defense, I've found, certainly at the Div 1 level, was it just froze them. People just stood still, not knowing what to do. And I knew I could out-leverage people based on the fact that they just didn't understand what they should be doing. Having come out and start to defend 2 by 2, and now all of a sudden you're in a three tight end set, they would just freeze. Now, admittedly, it was kind of the first year that we'd run that, and it was fairly mistake prone, to be honest, in terms of lineups and stuff like that. But it started to go the way we wanted it to towards the end of the season.
Yeah. I know when we played you the second time, the first time we hadn't got a QB, so we were dead anyway. But the second time, you were like a juggernaut. You were unstoppable. But I was saying to them, look, these are going to win it all this year because you can't stop them. So I know at that point in time, you were rolling. So whatever you were doing, by the time we got to game 9, you guys were cruising, and I mean really cruising. So that's testament to yourself, coach.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Another point I was going to branch off of from game planning. It was like game calling. You are a signals guy, right, coach? If I remember correctly.
Yeah. So we huddle, but I signal to the QB.
Yep.
So I know.
Do you find that's the easiest way for you? Because I know that's this question I've already asked you, but have you always been a signals guy? What else have you actually tried in the past before you settled on signals?
So I've done various things. I've done having a receiver running, so take the play call running. I've had wrist coaches. But I've always been very conscious of, I was part of a big staff at things like Birmingham, and we would steal people's wrist coach calls. Right. So it was pretty obvious when they were calling 1 what play was coming. If they were calling 2 what play was coming. It only takes a half of football before you know what's going on.
Yep.
Signals, I think, is a bit more difficult. Certainly in my set, because I was quite a heavy verbiage guy. So I know, obviously, we've spoken about this in the past, but I wasn't kind of a one-word play call. One of my plays could have been, spread to spread, shift to tight wing, zoom, 90 grind left, alert, 10 steal.
How would you call that, coach? How would you signal that?
Literally play blocks segment by segment. So it'd just be like spread, shift to tight wing. It's literally like that.
So you literally just spell it out, but in images.
Yeah.
So you're not got like one word for the whole play. You are literally just breaking it down each word with a signal, technically.
Yeah, pretty much.
That worked the best for you.
Yeah. The only thing we did kind of put one word to was like our trick play, which was our fake outside zone halfback pass. That was just way, way too wordy. I think we were at like 30 words once you'd put the whole play together. Yeah. So we just called it like one word.
Do you think you were aided? Do you think you were aided, though, coach, by the fact that you were such a veteran QB that made that possible, or do you think that you're like Steve? I know young Stevie. Do you think Stevie could have coped with that on a regular basis? Like, you think something like that will work for a younger coach, a newer coach, or would you suggest? Because I mean, people always say we've all been down the risk coach route, and we've all come away from it for whatever reason that we so choose. But for me, I just think singles have to be simple. Whereas yours, there, I mean, you break down the words, it looks so easy. It's just that, do you not fear for a young QB who's already got the game in his head, and then you're giving him 15 signals?
I would argue that my two less experienced guys were better at it than Tris. And the reason for that is because he had come, very similar to me, he had come from a world of 1 and 2 word play calls. So that was the world he was comfortable in. The reason I got wordier, and I know like we've spoken about this before kind of on chat and stuff, but I don't necessarily believe that shortening things makes it simpler. And the way I kind of broke it down to the guys was, imagine ordering from a Chinese restaurant. You've got 100 things on your menu. Now you've got to remember, like, what is sweet and sour chicken and egg fried rice? So that's a 67 and a 34, but you're still not quite sure. So whereas two numbers sounds a lot simpler on paper, right? But if you just say, I want sweet and sour chicken and egg fried rice,
Exactly.
on paper it's a lot wordier,
yeah.
But actually it makes more sense in the moment rather than having to recall.
When you break it down, before, it just makes sense. When you put it in that perspective, it's like, if you're going to order something, you'll just say, can I have this, can I have this, rather than can I have a 61?
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that shorter is always simpler. I know there have been situations where other coaches, certainly that I've been close to, have kind of simplified to a point where it's got ultra complex. And I just kind of went the other way from that. And like I say, actually, I think our rookies picked it up better because they weren't conditioned to this 1 and 2 word.
If it's all they know, then they're going to be ticking over really good.
Yeah.
You touched on we both just touched on it. Risk coaches. What was the reason that you decided to move away from the risk coach? And if you are a young coach coming through, do you think that it's a viable option out of doors?
I mean, for me, it's just it was personal preference more than anything. I didn't like how easily stealable it was. I thought it gave you a ton of admin to do. So essentially, if you wanted to run a risk coach system well, you needed a first half and a second half risk coach. That's 2 lots of stuff. You know, in that hour and a half that I'm putting a risk coach together, I could be watching film, and I could be working out tendencies and stuff like that. So ultimately, that's why. The hand signals I just installed on a weekly basis. So it wasn't like, here's the full book of play signals, go and learn them. It was like, this week we're installing grind. Here's the grind signal. You know, and then it would just build and build and build to the point where the signals were coming in with that. So a lot of it was to take the admin side off me. A lot of it was just personal preference that I didn't like.
One thing I found with risk coaches is that even when you have signals, there'll still be wide receivers who'll have a risk coach with all the plays drawn up on it, and you're like, just learn the play. You don't need the risk coach. But
that's another reason I stopped people using risk coaches. So,
yeah.
And I say that a little bit nervously because I do understand that everyone has different learning styles.
True.
But what I think risk coaches have done when I've been around them is create a culture of laziness, in that I don't need to commit this to memory now because I've got it right here. So I'm going to get a play call and I'm running a slant. I'd rather them know it and understand it. And that's something, I know when we were talking about playbooks, but I didn't draw every play from every formation. I would draw it from 2 by 2, and then when we went into offensive meetings, I'd have the guys draw it out with me. And I wanted them to understand why we were doing something, and I wanted to make sure that they understood the purpose of that position, what that role meant, what that route was doing, You know, this isn't always designed to get the ball. This is clearing someone out. And I think some of that nuance you miss when you just get lazy and put it on a wrist coach.
I actually really do like that. The minds of getting the guys on, getting the guys. I mean, you do it with the QBs to a certain extent, right? All the time. You want to draw this up, but getting all your guys on the board and going, you know, what's grind, and then you expect them to, you know, I actually kind of like that because you usually find that most guys will know what they're doing to their position and nothing else. So it's like if you can get a guy that knows the whole play, I think that's, you know, because they've got to draw it, so they've got to learn it.
The other thing as well, because certainly our quick game, our one-step pass game was split concept.
Okay.
So we ran what I would call a hard beater on one side and a soft beater on the other. So they needed to understand which side of the play the QB was going to based on coverages and things like that. So as an example, we had like a double slant and a double hitch. They kind of needed to know that if we get a certain look from the defense where the QB's going and what his read window is.
Yep.
You know, if you're reading that double slant and you're reading inside to out, and that first guy gears down because he doesn't think he's getting the ball, he puts himself or a defender in the way, and the second window's closed. QB takes a lick, and everyone's kind of a bit upset. Yeah, right. So I think understanding your role in it is just as important as, you know, doing it because you're going to get the ball.
Do you want us to talk a bit about split coverage, split reads? Because I do like that because I don't think it's used enough in our country, to be honest. And I know that I don't use it because I don't feel comfortable or confident enough in the QBs. I mean, at the time I didn't do it when I had Johnny, and I didn't do it when I had Callum. But since then, those two QBs are more capable of doing it. But since then, obviously, when you got a first year QB, etc., it's not something that you really want to throw at them. But I do like it. So if you want to just quickly cover the process behind why you're choosing split. I know you've already spoken about it, but why you're choosing split reads and why do you think it's better than the regular quick game, which is normally mirrored, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was the thing I wanted to get away from. Like you say, with regular quick game, most of this country runs mirrored concepts, which is great until you come against a defense that's perfectly set up for that one concept. And then all of a sudden your plays are bust. And what I wanted to do was give, you know, I look like a genius, right? Because I've called a play that in theory shouldn't be covered. But what it actually does is give the QB options. The last thing you want to do is call, you know, a double hitch against press coverage, because then you're screwed, right? So I split my entire pass game up into hard beaters and soft beaters. What I mean by hard beater, like hard coverage, I classed anything under 3 yards. So 3 yard was our kind of line in the sand.
Yep.
If the defense was lined up kind of inside that 3 yard, that was a hard coverage. Or if we had any man coverage, that was classed as a hard coverage. Anything at like 4 yards and above was soft. So we knew we could get that zone look or get those things off. So a perfect example, we had something called steal. The reason we called it steal because it was basically stealing. We had the double slant to one side and the double hitch. So wherever they lined, and what you tend to see in this country is linebackers tend to stay at one level. They'll tend to stay at 3 or 5, but they're doing that together, right? So we just picked the side of the field that we liked to match up on most and hit it. I guess it gives you one limitation in terms of, I'm lucky that I like 2x2, but if you are running split concept stuff, your 3x1's difficult. So we countered that with some motions and stuff like that. We ran a bunch of swings. But it was basically to stop the defense having the perfect play. So if we called a quick game, we should have an answer one way or another, whether it's a zone coverage, a man coverage. Yes, it takes some time to get your QBs at a point of understanding that. but we just used to read it from the safety down. So we would look at middle, like most QBs do, I guess, but middle field, is that open or closed? We would come down to the corner. Are they inside, outside? Are they at that 3 or beyond? And then to the apex backer, are they wide? Are they tight? Are they high? Are they low? And 9 times out of 10, you can get a coverage read just on what they're doing. If I ever came across a split coverage team, then I'd have been screwed. But luckily, there aren't many split coverage teams in the UK.
That for me, that's what I would call a luxury to have that. I don't think that's something that you can probably do with the first year team unless you had the talent. But I mean the way that I get it.
Part of me thinks though that the QB position's kind of predicated on talent anyway. If you haven't got a guy that can read a field, yeah, but if you haven't got a guy that can read the field, his arm talent's a waste.
That's true. I've been there. I've had people that I can't do it, and that is a whole different ball game in terms of what you can and what you can't do. But the way that I got around that because we do still run a ton of Vera concept if we can, and as you say, defenses aren't stupid, especially good defenses in Division 1. So the way that I got around that was that I always have a one-word call, and we just run it. If they were unsure, we call a car, whatever, Corvette or whatever, Cadillac, and we just default to inside zone and then live to point of the day because there's been times, especially against Stanwell last year, when we stuck the young kid in there, he was aware of his depth and he was just, as soon as that pressure came, he was just doing the headlights. And you try and protect him so much, but it's really hard to do. So envious a little bit of you able to do all those things. When I didn't do it myself, or I had the chance at those QBs, I was a little bit too apprehensive, and that's on me. So I was like, oh, I'm not sure, and then you pass.
Like I say, those young guys, I think as long as you communicate what you want and what you expect, I think those young guys actually picked it up just as well as the 15-year vet.
Yeah. I'll move forward. Let's talk about we've already touched on installing how you deliver your product, which is what I really like. One thing that I do want to cover, because we share similar thoughts on this, is I know I spoke about this on a couple of roundtables, and I kind of put it out there to see what people's vibe is. It's like, what's the worst trait of a new LC or a young LC? And for me, it's grab bagging. Now, when I shared this with you yesterday, you were very much in the same vein as me. Do you think that's probably the thing that we're all most guilty of as a young coach? Is grab bagging?
Yeah, I think. Like, don't get me wrong, we all beg, borrow, and steal from stuff.
Yep.
I think, like, I have a screen play as an example where I wanted to run a spill screen to the running back, but the problem that I'd always had over the years was, what's my outlet if that screen gets killed? So I went to YouTube and I watched countless hours of screenplays to the point where then I found something on the backside that I liked. So I don't think actually borrowing things that fit into what you want to do is necessarily a bad thing.
I agree with that.
I think when you're watching Oregon on a Saturday and you're like, oh, I'm going to grab that plus its terminology.
Yeah.
And then you watch Army and I'm going to grab that plus its terminology. And you just end up with this mishmash of different terminology, different systems. It doesn't all combine. And then you just end up with a bunch of plays on paper. And I don't think there's any kind of if this then that mentality with that kind of grab bagging scenario. If they shut that play down, what are you going to? And I think certainly early in your career, it's very easy to just grab plays that you like. But I think what you need to do is, look at a play and then dictate, if this gets taken away, what am I then going to? So yeah, I definitely think grab bagging as a whole can kind of confuse yourself, confuse you guys. I think you kind of lose a little bit of trust if you throw in, that week's game film up every week on. We're installing this week. It's what Texas Tech ran yesterday. The players aren't stupid, even if they're rookies. They know the situation. They can see that that's not coming from you, and I think you lose a little bit of faith from that. So I definitely think grab bagging's a bad thing. I think the other thing for me is ego. I've been very, very lucky that I was always in situations where I could go in and we would have open and honest dialogue about things. But I think there's nothing worse than having an OC who, you're terrible at running the football for a game, and your ego says, I'm going to keep running it until we get it right. Like, I think what that actually does is just destroy the confidence of you guys. You're putting them in bad situations, all because you're not prepared to deviate what you want to do for the betterment of 11 other people. So I strongly believe in my game plan is do what they don't want you to do anyway. But I'm not going to be someone that flogs a dead horse just for the sake of my ego because I want to get it right. So those are the two things for me.
Do you think it's...
What about yourself?
Well, but the way I see it is that because when I became I was always told system over play, system over play. But I was lucky enough to find myself in a system that I actually wanted to be around and learn. But I do worry sometimes that like some teams probably don't have systems, as in like they don't run a style of offense. Like I don't think you run a style of offense, do you? It's just like it's your system built from your experience. Would you agree with that, Coach?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, I class mine as spread 2.0.
Right.
There's no getting away from my background. I'm a spread guy. I've spent 15 years in the spread offense. I'm not going to come out and run flexbone. But that's not to say that there aren't concepts that I can incorporate from those systems. What I'm not going to do is just grab a flexbone play, lock, stock, and barrel, and try and squeeze it into my system. What I will do is look at that play, look at the outcome, and then try and reverse engineer it back into my terminology. And if I can't do it, I can't run it.
That's my biggest fear. Is that I know that when I first started out, even though I was in the system and I was there, you would watch college football on a Saturday, and your blood, we can run that, and you draw it all up, and you get there on Sunday and you waste 30 minutes of your time, and you go, we ain't gonna fucking run that, and you've wasted half an hour of your time. But my fear for the young coaches is that they're gonna just see plays and plays and plays, and just build a portfolio of plays rather than actually have the veins in the whole thing of your why you're running this, why you're doing it this way. I think people are missing that to a certain extent. I mean, I can only speak for what I've seen, because you can see, if you see a great opponent, you know that they've got pedigree. If you see an opponent that's lesser, why they're lesser? Is it talent? Is it because they're just not good?
Yeah, I mean, the why is definitely something I've preached for a number of years now. Yeah. And I know, look, I was working with Andrew Morgan, and I used to, ask him why a bunch of times, to the point where I think he nearly punched me in the face. But when I'm designing stuff, if I can't answer 3 whys on why I'm running it, then it doesn't go in. So you almost have to embrace that inner child of that why. If you can't get to the third why without kind of providing some reasonable answer, it just shouldn't be there. Because ultimately that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to take it to your players. Certainly if you've got veterans, like long-time veterans, you're like, oh, we're now going to run this. Okay, why are we running that? And I heard something a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me, that people don't care until they know you care. And I think if you can start asking the why and caring about the product that you're putting on, then your players will buy in and care of that product that you're trying to put in. But yeah, for me, it always starts with that why. And that's, coming back to that screen thing, it was, a lot of screens that I see on the backside are running some kind of outlet that is never a feasible outlet for the quarterback. So I'm like, why are you running this? So that's why I took to YouTube and went to look and borrow and steal. So I don't think borrowing and stealing stuff is a bad thing, as long as you understand why you're doing it. And one of the major people for that for me was Dave Soul. I've been very lucky to be around Dave Soul for a number of years. He's a great person for that. Why are you doing this? And that's been a huge help, definitely.
I think that's it's all valid points. Like, I think the longer you're in it, the more you question yourself, and when you start questioning yourself, that's when the truth comes and the answers come. I think we pretty much covered all the topics that we were going to cover today, Coach. Is there anything else that you want to touch on before we leave it?
I might throw this screenplay at you, actually, given that we've talked about it a little bit.
I'd like to see it. The screenplay connoisseur, I'd like to have a look.
You see that?
See it.
So the one thing that I was very conscious of is, like I say, I'd run screen or a slip screen, slow screen, running back screen, however you want to call it.
Yeah, we run that.
I'd run it for a number of years, but if the screen got caught up, it was busted. And I was very adamant that I wanted to have another option for the quarterback. So I did a number of hours of digging and found something I actually quite liked. So on the front side of this, so to the right side here, we've got the slow screen. So you've got the right tackle just kind of in a vertical set, trying to get the D end washed up field. Guard and centre will take a 2 count and then release out. So the right guard has got what we call the sidewalk assignment. So they're going to set the edge and pick up anything on the sidewalk. Centre's got first man inside. Backside guard, so the left guard in this instance is the rat kill guy. So he's going to climb up field, turn around, and then try and kill anything chasing down the running back. Obviously, running back's got that terrible pass pro, which most running backs are very good at. That terrible pass pro look, and then kind of slip out into the alley. So hopefully, if we get that down, it works a treat. On the front side, I'm just trying to run the defenders away, so trying to run the apex away to the middle field. It's drawn up as slants here. Essentially, we're taking slant routes and then going to convert that to blocking. So that was the front side. The back side, what we actually chose to do was what I termed as a turn back screen.
Turn back screen, okay.
So the X and the H both look like they're running 2-step outs. So the X will run a 2-step out for 2 steps, and then he'll turn back and run what is essentially a tunnel screen. So the H will run that out and block the corner. The left tackle, so the backside tackle in this instance, will go and pick up the apex guy. And then X, in theory, should get some kind of release. And this is one of the things that I got good feedback from people like Tris about, is that he had run a slow screen for a number of years, but this was actually the first time he had an outlet where if he broke down, he actually completed it, which was huge for him and huge for us. But I mean, I can show you that on the screen. I've got the actual YouTube video here. Don't know if you can see that, and I don't know how well this will pick up on. Don't know how well this will pick up on Zoom, but you see the screen gets pushed off, and they just pop it off into the tunnel screen. So I can share this. I can share this link, and it can be put in the description. But this was just a perfect example of something that I already wanted to do, but I was able to then go and beg, borrow, and steal. Just kind of that little bit on the backside.
Your double stance literally just turn into blocks.
Yeah.
Because most people, myself included, we'll just run them off, right? We'll just run them off, try and turn the corners, whereas you're just basically going to go ahead on someone. So I actually kind of like that.
Yeah, I think the difficulty with running off is that then you put your receivers in a bind, in that the DBs or the defenders have got two-way goes. Whereas we're running a slant, what we're actually doing is trying to bring them back into all the traffic.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about for the clip. Yeah.
We'll just block it there. So then, we've got a defined read for the guard. You've got the sidewalk guy. So that's either going to be the corner that stops his feet and we're going to blow the corner up, or the corner goes with him and we'll just pick up the first man outside. The centre can then just join the two receivers in kind of setting that inside wall, and the running back can literally just run that alley.
And how often would you call that? Would it be in a situation as a normal screen, like a aggressive defense?
So against aggressive defense, we'd run it. It was essentially my favourite blitz beater,
Right.
depending on what kind of blitz we saw. Some teams, there was a couple of years back now, but I think we ran this against Nottingham something like 4 times. It's just, I love running that running back screen. But we've all seen that screen that gets sniffed out, right? So that's why I wanted something legit on the backside of it.
I could probably get you a clip right now of us running that screen again. It happens. It happens a lot when you it's the only running back screen you've got. So I do like your twist on that, to be honest, coach. So I do like the grind. I do like the thing. So I've learned something.
Like I've said to you, like none of these ideas are original. So like if anyone ever wants to speak to me about stuff, or they want to see stuff, talk through, or actually tell me that I'm wrong and I should be doing something else. Like, I think the great thing that you've set up in this kind of platform is that we can start to have those conversations, right? So I don't profess to be the smartest guy in the room. And I said this to you last night. I think if you are the smartest guy in the room, you probably need to find a new room.
Totally agree.
So if people want to come and say, actually, that's a terrible way of doing it, then reach out to me. I'd love to learn what other people are doing. These videos can be great conversation starters, and I think I've said it to you, but I want to say it publicly, and like, thank you for setting this up, because I think you've made me a better coach by doing some of these videos. I've been able to see some amazing speakers, amazing topics. So keep doing what you're doing, and the rest of us will get behind it, I'm sure.
I appreciate you, coach. I know after my I would say meltdown. It wasn't meltdown. It was an observation yesterday. There were 2 or 3 who jumped on messages straight away, like, what can I do to help you? And I think it's that gets you through these things. Like, it's guys like yourself who are like, what can we do? What can we do? Because it's like your testimony there is the reason why this whole thing was started up. If a guy who coaching at your level can find things that 4 the guys from 4 different levels of coaching are talking about, and you can find things to take away from it.
Yeah. And if you can't learn from people like Murray and
exactly
those kind of guys, then you're in the wrong place.
Exactly, and that's the whole reason for doing it. The whole reason for the roundtable variation is because yours and mine and Murray's and Steve's, and you got into like Dave Gibbs, who was a younger coach, and Neil, who was at 1 year or so. Everybody's stuff is different. We all look at things a different way, and I think that it's great to open up and just talk about stuff. Because I know that my way is not always going to be the right way, and I know that I can fail as much as I can win. And I think when you're open to listening and learning, listening and learning, and going, actually, what, Dave, that's actually really shit. I'd rather somebody just say that, and then they're like, well, okay, fair enough. Why is it shit? And they go, well, because this, and you go, actually, yeah, you're right. It is pretty shit. So
yeah, I think it's one of those things. I don't think there's a bad idea. I just think there are ideas that we don't agree with, right? And I think we've almost got caught in this society trap that because we don't agree with it, it's wrong. I know like people like Dave Gibbs, an example, who's an ex-Birmingham Lion product.
Yep.
I'm 100% confident he's not running anything similar to what was around the Birmingham Lions, but that doesn't make it wrong. Like, he's gone away, he's worked his ass off to get where he is. He's now a very successful coach.
He also found a mentor, and that mentor taught him different stuff. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's a topic to talk about, but I know that when I came into the game, when I looked at joining a team, I wanted to learn about run and shoot. That was what I wanted to learn about, and there was nobody close to us, or I didn't think anybody at all was running run and shoot in the UK. But I was approached by Coach Reid at the Revolution. He said, "I'm running the air raid. It's pretty close. You want to come and learn it?" And I jumped at the chance, and it was from there that a guy who I didn't even know took it on to teach me something.
Yep.
And then from that step, it wasn't. And then I learned an offense, but it wasn't until I was around Jay for 3-4 years, and he didn't teach me about offense. He taught me how to be a coach. When I talk about being a coach, there's a lot of aspects of being a coach, not just being boarding players up and stuff. Being a coach is a multi-level thing, and it comes with experience more than anything else, and confidence and stuff like that. And when you just sit there and watch a guy like Jay, he's got that confidence, and he gives it all everybody around him confidence. And I think if you can find, if anybody's looking to get a mentor or be around, as you said, be around coaches of quality on a consistent basis, it can only make you better. And that's why I know you've said it already, and I've said before, is that when you're starting out, just get with a team who you think can make you the best possible coach you can be, and don't try and be an RC until you think you're ready. Don't fall into that thing. I'll be a coach in every 2 years. I've got to be an RC.
I think I would say as well, don't fall into the trap of negative feedback means a bad thing.
Right. True.
There's been times, like I'm quite lucky that I've been around the Midlands football for a while. There's a guy who's recently taken the OC job at the Birmingham Lions, obviously a program that's close to my heart. We go back and forth all the time on the stuff he wants to run. What would I do? There's a lot of times that I don't agree with him. I don't tell him he's wrong, but there's a lot of times that I don't agree with him. I'm lucky that he takes it in the spirit of the way what I'm saying is meant. So if I say, like, I don't like that, I would do it this way, that doesn't mean don't do it that way. That just means here's another perspective. And I think sometimes that ego thing, again, we get caught in that ego state where we listen to reply. And actually, most of the time, if you just listen and learn from it, you'll get something from it. So, if someone was to tell me that, my playbook is awful, and I'm absolutely sure there are people out there, they're absolutely entitled to that opinion. But I love to hear that. I love people telling me I'm wrong, because it challenges me to clarify my thinking. Are they right? Am I wrong? I'm not going to go, well, it's better than yours, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean,
that's childish, right? Yeah.
So I think one of the pieces of advice I would definitely give to younger coaches is seek out those contrasting opinions. I'm a spread guy. I've been a spread guy all my life, but all my coaching life. That doesn't mean that I haven't looked at flex bone, wing T, run and shoot. I've looked at all those and what is the spread missing? And I think if you can go into that mindset of this is what I want to do, but actually let me kind of go back and forth with somebody. And that's where I was very lucky that I had, people like, I've been around Jay for a long time. And he's awesome in being like, that looks ridiculous.
I always call him a soundboard. He's like a soundboard, isn't he?
And he's been around football for an amazing amount of time. And hasn't been active for a couple of years, which is a massive shame, to be honest.
He doesn't want to do it, coach. He doesn't want to do it anymore.
But it's it's one of those things. But I think if you can seek out opinions that tell you that you're wrong, and then you're going to come away with two things, right? You're either going to come away with, I'm right because of this, and that's the way I want to do it, regardless of what someone else wants. Or you can come away and think, actually, you know what, they're right, there is a better way to do this. And in either one of those scenarios, you end up a better coach.
I do think, as I've just said it now, I think anybody who can have a soundboard, even if you don't have not even a mentor. If you've got if you got somebody you can soundboard with, somebody who is going to be honest with you, and you're honest with them, and like you say, well, look, I wouldn't do it that way, but and if they go, actually, or I'm going to try it this way anyway and see what happens. Just that soundboard with the guy, I've been that way with Neil for a long time. When he first started it, is that we would just talk to each other, even when we were on different teams, just talk all the time. And it's just like, if you're there for them and they're there for you, I think that having that soundboard is a great thing to have for anybody. And I know that like of yourself, if anybody approaches you, and the same goes to me, if somebody approaches you, you're gonna be honest and open and give them every answer you can. I'm posting plays on Twitter today of all the playbook. I don't care. You can have whatever you want of mine. It's never ever been a secret, and I'll never ever hold anything back, whether I'm running it right or wrong. And I'll just try and point out that coach, we are out here, and we are out here to help anybody that wants to help, because I was helped. And I don't know, and that's what I'm just trying to say to people is, what, there are coaches there who will give back to the coaching community. And for me, the thing for me, and I'm rambling there, which is nothing I don't like to do. But the thing for me is, when you go to a clinic and there's an American gift store, it's rammed. But when I would much rather talk to a UK guy, because he relates to me, he resonates with me. He'll tell me something I can go, actually, you know what? Yeah, I can totally agree with what you're saying there. Whereas sometimes you just don't get that, or all you get is X's and O's off the American brothers. And I think sometimes that's why I just like to hear UK coaches talk. And I feel like if I can listen to a one round table with looks at yourself and I'll take something away, I'm thinking if I've taken something away, somebody else has. And that's why when you've said this before, I love these things. And I'm like, you're actually watching this, coach. Like, if all the coaches think, I didn't expect a guy of your ilk to be watching, Coaches Connected, because you don't need to. But for me, you're like me. It's like learn and listen.
That's where I debate it though, right? Because I think I do need to.
I think I need to, but I'm always in chats and clinics.
I think it's that old adage that the more you know, the more you understand. You know nothing. And coming back to your coaching convention point and coaching speaker, I understand why there's that draw of the American guys. But I do think we have got a very good network of coaches in the UK of various different experiences. I think sometimes we get caught in the trap that an older guy is good because of his experience, and that's not always necessarily right. People like Dave Gibbs is a perfect example. He's a younger guy but doing a great job, and he's somebody that's very active in kind of giving back. I think there are literally hundreds of us out there.
There's a lot of young coaches actually in the Premiership, like guys like Luke and yourself and I can't remember the
not anymore.
Harry was obviously birds and stuff for a while. Those are not elderly guys. Those are quite young guys who are top tier, and they know their stuff. And if you listen, I'm always open to listen to them because they know what they're talking about, just like yourself. And I think if people want to listen and want to take on board what they're saying, you can take away some noise.
And that would be my takeaway, right? It's just, if you want to know something, reach out to those people. Everyone's on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Like, if anyone ever wants to talk football to me, like, feel free to give me a shout. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook.
I'll put your things in the description, Coach. We've been on for over an hour now, so I thank you for coming on, spitballing with me.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that if anybody wants to run this back, they'll find a few gems that you've spit, in the words of Eminem. There's a few gems there that you've laid down for the folks today. I appreciate your time, Coach, and it was great to have you back on. More and more in a one-to-one situation. But for now, thank you very much, Coach, and I will speak to you again soon, mate. Take care.
Appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, mate. It's a great job.
Thank you.